Only in Kentucky can a single county claim the highest mountain peak in the entire Commonwealth, and also the history of a tragic, violent gunfight between a local sheriff and a sitting district judge. Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm learning a little bit more about Kentucky, one county at a time, all 120 of them. And today I'm learning about Letcher County. Situated deep in the southeastern coalfields along the Virginia border, Letcher County spans about 339 square miles of heavily dissected, densely forested terrain. But the landscape here is a little bit more than rugged. It's defined by massive ancient tectonic violence. The southern and southeastern boundaries of the county are starkly walled off by the massive physical presence of Pine Mountain. This 125-mile-long continuous ridge is the direct surface result of the Pine Mountain overthrust fault, a catastrophic geological collision that shoved ancient rock strata to the surface over 300 million years ago. And so the sheer, steep face of this mountain creates a formidable geographic barrier overlooking the plateau. But while Pine Mountain is the most continuous feature, the absolute highest elevation in the entire Commonwealth of Kentucky is actually found right here along the Letcher and Harlan County border on the slopes of Black Mountain, peaking at over 4,100 feet. This extreme elevation creates a highly unusual hydrological phenomenon. Letcher County actually serves as the headwaters for three completely different major North American river systems. The Big Sandy, the Kentucky, and the Cumberland rivers all originate from springs in those high mountains before flowing off in entirely divergent directions. It's a geographical reality that gave rise to the idea that no water enters Letcher County except from the sky. For centuries, this daunting terrain acted as a massive physical barrier, but it's also possessed one vital weakness: Pound Gap. Pound Gap is a natural depression in the Pine Mountain ridge sitting at an elevation of nearly 2,400 feet. Became the absolute critical entry point for pioneers and explorers pushing westward. In 1774, Daniel Boone famously utilized this exact pass, which he called Sounding Gap, to cross into Kentucky. Anyway, later on, the Kentucky General Assembly officially carved Letcher County out of the rugged counties of Harlan, Perry, and Pike. They named the new county in honor of Robert Perkins Letcher, the sitting governor of Kentucky at the time. The county seat was established at a small settlement originally called Summit City, but it was quickly renamed Whitesburg to honor the state legislator who had introduced the enactment bill. When the Civil War erupted, Letcher County's strategic geography turned into a highly contested, bloody war zone. Because Pound Gap was the primary bottleneck through the mountains, whoever controlled the gap controlled the invasion route between Union-sympathizing eastern Kentucky and the Confederate stronghold of Virginia. The extreme isolation of the Cumberland Plateau combined with the lingering bitter animosities of the Civil War fostered a fierce independent mountain culture in the late 19th century. It was an era defined by blood feuds, illicit moonshining, and frontier justice. This environment produced figures that blurred the line between historical fact and Appalachian myth, the most famous being John Wesley Wright, widely known as Devil John Wright. Devil John Wright was a notoriously prolific gunfighter, lawman, and Pinkerton detective who reportedly killed between 16 and 28 men in the line of duty. He also fathered an estimated 35 children. Another incredible native son was Martin Van Buren Bates. Born near the settlement of Kona in 1837, Bates experienced a massive unexplained growth surge as a child, eventually reaching an astonishing height of 7'11" and weighing over 500 pounds. Known affectionately as the Kentucky River Giant, he served as a captain in the Confederate Army, striking absolute terror into any troops that would be opposing him. But after the war, he actually became somewhat of a global celebrity, joining the circus and eventually marrying a Canadian woman who was also nearly 8 feet tall. The two remain listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the tallest married couple in recorded medical history. We also have to talk about the Pound Gap Massacre. On the morning of May 14, 1892, a prominent local moonshiner named Ira Mullins was transporting a wagon loaded with whiskey across the crest of Pine Mountain. Waiting in a meticulously prepared ambush behind a pile of stones, a site now permanently known as Killing Rock, was Dr. Marshall Benton Taylor, famously known as the Red Fox of the Cumberlands. Taylor was an interesting figure. He was a practicing politician, a preacher, a U.S. Marshal, and ruthless assassin. As the wagon approached, Taylor and two accomplices unleashed a devastating barrage of repeating rifle fire. And the ambush was absolute slaughter. Mullins, his wife, and 3 others were killed instantly. The sheer brutality of the attack generated national headlines. The Red Fox was eventually hunted down, convicted of first-degree murder, and then hanged in the gallows in Virginia. For decades following the Civil War, Letcher County remained largely isolated and stagnant. That profound isolation was completely shattered at the dawn of the 20th century, however, when northern industrialists discovered massive, highly lucrative 14-foot thick seams of coal buried beneath the mountains. In 1909, the massive Consolidation Coal Company purchased options on over 100,000 acres of land, and because the region completely lacked any viable roads or rail lines, the corporation was forced to undertake a monumental engineering feat. They literally hauled the heavy machinery required to build an industrial civilization over the treacherous mountain passes using massive teams of oxen. In November 1912, the railroad finally breached the mountains, triggering an unprecedented, explosive economic boom. The population skyrocketed as local farmers were joined by a massive influx of Eastern European immigrants and African Americans migrating from the deep South. This sudden demographic shift transformed a formerly homogenous pioneer society into a diverse, multilingual industrial powerhouse almost overnight. To house this massive workforce, the coal corporations rapidly constructed sprawling company towns. The naming of these communities vividly reflects the absolute control the corporations held over the landscape. They built the massive model city of Jenkins, named for a Baltimore banker. They built McRoberts, named for a New York City banking executive. They built SECO, which is simply a corporate acronym for the Southeast Coal Company. They even built a town called Carbon Glow, named specifically to advertise the highly combustible nature of their coal product. Among the thousands of immigrants drawn to the boom were highly skilled Italian stonemasons. They settled in Whitesburg, establishing a distinct cultural enclave locally known as Little Italy. These artisans utilized local stone to construct stunning architecture throughout the county, most notably the Graham Memorial Presbyterian Church. Seeking to honor their homeland, the masons subtly incorporated a large stone shaped exactly like the boot of Italy into the front facade of the church. Decades later, during World War II, when America was fighting Mussolini's fascist regime, that boot stone became a target of intense, angry, anti-Italian sentiment. To pacify the furious locals, the stone was tactfully fractured to disguise its silhouette, though the fractured boot remains clearly visible on the church today as a symbol of the county's melting pot heritage. By the 1960s, the initial boom of the coal industry had given way to rapid mechanization, severe job losses, and extreme poverty. This era thrust Letcher County into the national stage, fundamentally altering how America viewed Appalachia. The catalyst was Harry Caudill, a Whitesburg lawyer and Letcher County native. In 1963, Caudill published his seminal blistering book, Night Comes to the Cumberlands, a biography of a depressed area. It was a searing indictment of how the coal industry had ruthlessly exploited the whole region. The book caught the attention of President LBJ, who used Caudill's work as the intellectual foundation for his sweeping national war on poverty legislation. But while the book brought desperately needed federal aid to the area, it also triggered a relentless, invasive influx of national television crews. Networks broadcasted endless images of dilapidated coal camps and barefoot children, and this generated intense, boiling resentment among local residents who felt deeply humiliated by the one-dimensional, highly exploitative portrayals of their culture. And this profound cultural tension reached a tragic, violent climax in 1967. A highly acclaimed Canadian filmmaker named Hugh O'Connor was in the Letcher County community of Jeremiah, filming a destitute coal miner sitting on his porch. The property, however, was owned by a deeply eccentric, fiercely protective local landlord named Hobart Eisen. Infuriated by the presence of the cameras on his land, Eisen aggressively approached the film crew, drew a revolver, and shot O'Connor in the chest, killing him instantly. As you can imagine, the murder shocked the international film community, but local sentiment was overwhelmingly in Eisen's favor. Many residents fundamentally believed the media had provoked the violence by relentlessly exploiting their poverty for the entertainment of wealthy coastal audiences. Eisen ultimately served just 1 year in prison. The tragedy represented a profound crisis regarding who has the right to document a marginalized community, a tension masterfully explored decades later in the Sundance premiering documentary Stranger with a Camera, directed by Letcher County native Elizabeth Barrett. The devastating fallout from the national media's portrayal directly catalyzed a powerful movement for the local self-representation. In 1969, the Appalachian Film Workshop, known now globally as Appalshop, was founded in Whitesburg. Its driving mission was to empower Appalachians to document their own authentic traditions, music, and socio-economic struggles. Over the decades, Appalshop evolved into a nationally renowned arts center, operating a community radio station, and building a massive, irreplaceable historical archive of mountain films and audio recordings. Tragically, this repository of mountain history faced an existential threat in the summer of 2022 when eastern Kentucky was struck by a catastrophic 1,000-year flood. The North Fork of the Kentucky River crested at a record 22 feet, completely devastating downtown Whitesburg. The Appalshop building was inundated with toxic mud, and over 6 feet of floodwater, submerging the archival vaults and devastating the community. The grief and violence of Letcher County has continued into the modern era. In September of 2024, the county was rocked by an unbelievable tragedy right inside the Letcher County Courthouse. The sitting county sheriff, Mickey Steins, walked into the chambers of District Judge Kevin Mullins. And following a brief interaction, Steins drew his weapon and shot and killed the judge in his own office before surrendering to police. The shocking, unprecedented murder of a sitting judge by the county's top law enforcement officer sent shockwaves not just through the entire state, but the nation, adding a dark, deeply tragic modern chapter to the county's long history of frontier justice and violence. Today, Letcher County stands at a critical, incredibly difficult crossroad. The near-total collapse of the coal industry has devastated the local tax base, forcing the community to aggressively pursue economic diversification. The county is leaning heavily into stunning natural beauty, expanding the Pine Mountain State Scenic Trail and developing a massive multi-million-dollar sports shooting and archery resort park near Millstone to draw tourism back to the mountains. So, that's Letcher County. What did I get wrong this time?